We hear so much in the media, and we have over the years about ICE and how ICE has been vilified. And we talk so much about the border and what's happening there. So I'm going to bring you a guest today that can really, truly speak to so many of these issues. He's a military veteran. He is worked in federal law enforcement and had an extraordinary career, and now he's dipping his toes into politics. So I thought you needed to meet this guy, John Fabbricatore. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, so I'm going to ask you the same question I ask every retired cop I talk to. Why'd you become a cop?
It's a long story actually. But it goes back to my teenage years. I was a victim of violence as a teenager. Was stabbed multiple times in high school. And then I had a self-defense teacher take me under his wing. He was a retired NYPD sergeant, and started teaching me self-defense, and I just kind of into law enforcement, fell in love with law enforcement, and then getting into the United States Air Force, I became a security policeman, and that really just kind of drove me further into law enforcement and long into that law enforcement career.
So you end up in federal law enforcement. Talk about that career.
Yeah, winding up in federal law enforcement right out of the Air Force, I was looking for a job. I either wanted to be a firefighter or a cop, and thankfully I wound up with in law enforcement. But Federal Protective Service was hiring right away. So the first World Trade Center bombing trial was going on, and they needed a lot of Federal Protective Service officers to work downtown Manhattan. So I had applied for that job and got that job and worked that first World Trade Center trial, the one where they bombed the garage, and really started getting into that federal career, and FPS moved me over to the Oklahoma City bombing trial in Denver, Colorado. Worked on that trial, and then applied for INS at the time. Wanted to kind of get more a little bit into investigations and doing a little bit more, and applied for INS and got the INS job in 1998.
So you have seen the evolution of our border issues here in the United States from the 90s on. You've also seen the evolution of the INS, right?
Yes.
And the way that all of that has branched out. And you ended up working in for ICE, and so talk about how long before the border issues that we have now, ICE was really the agency that got so bizarrely vilified and demonized. Talk about that.
Yeah, so like I said, I started out with INS, right before 9/11, and we turned to ICE after 9/11. It was a combination of bringing customs and immigration together and putting us all into one agency. And immigration's always been this huge political issue. So even when I first got on in the 90s and we were INS, at the time, President Clinton, had brought forth some new rules and regulations under the Immigration Nationality Act, and those were voted on in 1996. There was a bipartisan effort, but there was still a lot of politics involved with immigration. There always has been. And we saw that really start to move forward even after 9/11 and everything that happened. A lot of eyes were on INS, so we're on, and then into ICE. How could this happen? How could these people be allowed to, come into the country, and we weren't following up on them? And the politics always gets involved. And as we saw it go more into ICE and more people started coming into the country illegally, you start to see this effort, especially with immigration, where they kind of mix up the law with humanitarian effort. So there's always going to be this humanitarian uh, aspect of immigration law, where we do have people trying to get into this country who are fleeing from countries that are war torn, or that they deserve to get some refugee status or claim asylum. But you also have a lot of people trying to come into this country who are coming into this country just based on economic reasons only. They're coming here to try to get into America to make more money, and they're doing so illegally. So you have this mass of two different things, and people get those very confused. And as that goes on, people start to vilify ICE, saying, well, ICE is, going after all these people and they're treating people badly. And it's just not true. What ICE tries to do, if you look at their daily job duties, I mean, they're trying to stop criminal aliens. They're trying to stop drug smuggling, human smuggling, sex trafficking. And there is an aspect of immigration law where if you've entered this country illegally, you can be arrested, and you can be brought in front of an immigration judge, and that's the right thing to do. That's what the law says. But people get it very confused and mixed up, and because they see that humanitarian aspect of it. But those who have come in and they can claim asylum, they have that lawful right to do so, and they have a good claim, will probably become legalized. And those who came in illegally and do not have a good claim will go in front of a judge, and they'll be found deportable and possibly removed.
I've done a fair amount of international traveling, and there has been no border that I have encountered where I was just able to walk
Right.
in and bypass authorities. Why can't the Border Patrol just turn people right back around and send them back either on the south or the northern borders?
Mhm.
Can you address that?
Yeah, we actually do. So we do have a thing called expedited removal. We do have voluntary returns and voluntary departure, in which the Border Patrol can do that. The problem is right now with the way that our asylum laws are written, the minute that they claim credible fear, they have to have a credible fear interview to determine whether their asylum claim is good. The problem with this administration is not using detention at all. So they've lowered the amount of detention beds. They're not putting people in detention. So normally and historically, people would enter the country illegally and then make an asylum claim. They'd be put in detention and have their credible fear hearing in detention. Once they are decided whether that credible fear hearing is good, they would be sent to an immigration judge for furtherance, or they would be set into removal proceedings in which they would then be removed from the United States. What's happening now is people are just being allowed to enter the interior of the United States en masse. So we've had millions of people enter, and they're all getting court dates that are now 5, 8 years down the road. And that's where the problem lies, is you're allowing people to come in and then get settled, and then 5 to 6 to 8 years down the road they're finally getting an immigration hearing. And that's where a lot of the problem lies, because we don't know who many of these people are. They're not properly vetted at the border. They're lightly vetted, and then they're allowed to come into the US. Historically, when they would come in and they were put in detention, there was a better vetting done because we had them in a detention setting, and our intel aperture was much larger, and we could actually do much more intelligence on someone who's sitting in our detention area. And we can do better interviews. We can really look at those scars, marks, tattoos, all those things that are on them, to really determine, hey, this person's a gang member, or they're someone who we may not want to let in the interior of the US. What's happening now is that they're just fastly going through everybody and letting whomever in, and we're getting a lot of gang members entering into the US.
Now you're also a security expert, and we keep hearing from the director of the FBI. We keep hearing intelligence reports that really some sort of terror attack, whether a lone wolf situation or a larger scale terror attack, is frankly imminent. What are your thoughts on that?
It absolutely is. I mean, if we just look at some of the terrorists that they've caught over the last year. I mean, we've caught an El Shabaab terrorist that wandered around the U.S. for almost a year. He was a bomb maker for El Shabaab. He was let in, and then a red notice finally came out for him. And by the time that red notice came out, he had been in the U.S. for a year. We've seen ISIS recently come in. The FBI is tracking a bunch of cases on that, on people from Tajikistan that have come in that may have ties to ISIS. So it is imminent. I believe that within the last 3 years, we have had cells come into the United States that are establishing themselves and waiting for that moment when they're told to go and do that. And unfortunately, we have to now work behind the curve on that. And I hope our intelligence is good enough right now, and who we have in our federal agencies are actually looking at this and not other stupid things that we shouldn't be looking at, but looking at who has come into this country and keeping the eyes on it, because we can't let an incident happen. It needs to be stopped before it happens, and we can't work up this reactionary idea that, oh, okay, we've let them in, now we're just going to wait for something to happen. It can't be like that. We need to make sure that our law enforcement partners are working day in and day out to make sure that something does not happen, because those people are in the U.S. right now.
So we hear a lot, we hear really almost every day about some sort of violent crime committed by someone who's in the country illegally. And very often, these people have been arrested multiple times and detained by local authorities, and they have something on them called an ICE detainer. And so many of these of the frankly blue city or blue county sheriff's departments don't honor those ICE detainers and they let
Yeah.
people go. Can you explain what an ICE detainer is
Mhm.
and how a law enforcement official can ignore that?
The ACLU is really the one who got in the middle of this and really destroyed this for us. So, an ICE detainer, and I've written a book about this. I've written a book about the detainer situation and sanctuary cities called De-Iced. And basically what happens is an ICE detainer is in immigration law, and it allows ICE officers and agents to look at a case, someone who's in detention, and say, ICE has a reason to believe that this person is removable from the United States. We would like to arrest this person upon release of local charges. So we put that detainer on that person in a detention setting. And, again, in the past, local law enforcement would ring ICE up and say, hey, your detainer's coming to fruition. This person's about to get out. Can you send somebody to pick him up? Well, what was happening is ICE does not have a lot of officers and agents working. There's about 6,000 nationwide. And that's 6,000 total. That's not actually who's on the street doing these pickups. So it's much less than that. So it was taking anywhere, from 12 to 72 hours for ICE to then pick these people up. And that's where the ACLU came in and said, no, once local charges are done, if ICE does not pick them up immediately, the minute local charges are done, then that person is being held illegally. And, they can file a habeas, they can, do all this stuff. They can sue you for holding them past their local charges. And so a lot of, police departments and sheriff's departments were like, well, we're not going to hold them at all. We're not going to, if ICE can't get here the moment that those, charges are done, we're releasing them to the street. So the detainer became this thing that it wasn't working for us. It just, we could not get out. We didn't have enough officers that we could be at every single jail waiting to just pick people up. And my correction for that was always, why not call us a day or two before the charges are ready to get? Why wait until the moment that you were going to release this person to let ICE know? And now we're on the clock because you're about to release them out the door. Why not let us know 5 days in advance? I mean, when the end day is going to be. And there just wasn't a good enough effort by local law enforcement and ICE to get together and try to work this problem out. Once the ACLU started suing a lot of these small, especially county sheriff's departments that didn't have a lot of money, a lot of people threw up their hands and said, we are done with this. We're just going to release them to the street.
It's just extraordinary. So, John, when we look at, frankly, the unfettered access that people have in this country now and the effect that it's having on not just on our citizens but on our law enforcement, on their psyche, on our resources,
Yeah.
what do you see as the answer?
Yeah, the answer is we have to have control of our immigration system. Look, I'm very pro immigration. I'm pro legal immigration. Like, I worked for ICE for over 23 years. I saw a lot of naturalization ceremonies. I want people to become naturalized citizens. I want people to come here legally, but they need to be vetted. We need to know who everyone is that's coming in. We should not, and we can't allow access to gang members and people who want to do America harm. You'll hear this argument, especially, toward the left, that, illegal immigrants cause less crimes than United States citizens. And I argue that, but the statistics do bear that out. And if we look at 100,000 people for United States citizens and a population of 100,000, U.S. citizens are committing about 1,400 crimes. If you look at a population of illegal immigrants, they're committing about 700 crimes to 100,000 people. But that's still 700 crimes additional that our local law enforcement now has to work on when they could be focusing on the 1,400 crimes by U.S. citizens per 100,000 population.
Right. Do
So
we need to import criminals right now?
absolutely, and that's my argument. Like I still don't buy. I believe that 700 number is higher because a lot of local jurisdictions don't report foreign-born detainees, and they're not reporting that stat. So it's very hard for us to show who illegal aliens are. But still, it doesn't matter because the number should be zero. If you have a sheriff's department or a police department that is administering to a population of 100,000, that 1,400 crimes by United States citizens is a lot of crimes that they're already focusing on. Now, when you add an additional 700 crimes on top of that, that they're now having to investigate of illegal aliens, it makes a problem, and it causes officers to work harder, officers to work more hours, more taxpayer dollars are going into now housing that additional 700 if you arrest them. So the problem becomes expanded. We don't need to look at things and say, well, this person commits less. It doesn't matter if they commit any crimes. It adds to the problem that we already have, and it's just more than our local law enforcement can deal with.
So you get through this extraordinary career in federal law enforcement. You open a consulting company. You're currently doing that. You got a nice federal pension, all that.
Yes.
And you get to just kind of live your life. But John, you decided to get involved in politics. Talk about why you felt so strongly about continuing to serve this country that you said, I'm going to run for office.
Yeah, well, I've got to go back a little tiny bit. So, I loved being in federal law enforcement, and I was relatively young when I retired. I retired at 50. I was a member of the senior executive service, a director for ICE. And I decided to retire at 50 because I could not stand what this administration was doing with the border. They had brought me to DC to work on the Afghanistan withdrawal. I believe that they had messed that up. A lot of the things that I was seeing, I just didn't, I couldn't agree with, and I just couldn't give orders to my officers and agents anymore. Based on the orders that I was getting from this administration, and I didn't feel like I could be a good and effective leader. So I got out at 50 with 30 years of service. And I thought I was just going to go home and hunt and fish and be done with law enforcement and get it all out of my mind because I was aggravated and just mad at the system. And I got home, and about a week into being home, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, man, John, you've never quit at anything in your life. Like I've been a wrestler, I've been in MMA, I do a lot of other things, and I'm not a quitter, I'm a fighter. And I looked at myself, and I was mad at myself for being so aggravated and getting out and retiring. And I said, John, you can't be done. You're not done. You've got to do something else. So what can you do? And I'd started a consulting firm. I was having a little bit of success with that, but it wasn't enough. I didn't feel like I was making a big enough of enough difference. So I said the best way to do that is to serve again. And the way that I figured I could serve, I'd already been in the military, I'd already been in law enforcement, was to get into politics and run for this 6th congressional district seat here in Colorado, try and unseat the incumbent Democrat Jason Crow, and just bring to the table what I have, and that's basically being a subject matter expert on the border, national security, understanding what the basic common man is going through, wanting to build a better future for this country. And the best way that I could do that was to get into politics. Little did I know how hard that job would be to get to even where I am right now. But I'm glad I took that step and decided to do it.
Do you think that the political landscape is changing in that more and more common everyday people are going, you know what? I want to have a say other than at the ballot box.
Absolutely. Like exactly what you just said. We have a lot of attorneys and lawyers in Congress. Okay. And yes, they may have a depth of knowledge book wise and understanding how laws may work. But we need people that have operational experience, people who have actually done it. And, that's where I think I come in. I've got that operational experience on the border. I've got operational experience in the military. And that's something I think we're lacking in Congress right now.
What would it mean to you to get to DC as an elected official?
It would mean a lot to me. Number one, it would mean that the people here in the state of Colorado trusted me to be their representative in Congress, and I don't take that lightly. I would be very honored to have this position and to be able to serve the people in this state and of this great country. But it also means that I have an opportunity then to really make a difference. And I think a lot of people get into politics for some of the wrong reasons. And for me, the reason to get into politics is to be that representative, to open up the books and let the American people know exactly what we're doing. What are we spending our tax dollars on? How are we spending those tax dollars? Should we be spending those tax dollars? And just I think that's the best thing I can do as a new representative and getting in. As a freshman congressman, people are like, "Oh, what are you going to be able to do?" Well, the thing I'll have is oversight. The thing I will be able to do is show you what I see, because I will be your representative, and I think that's the best way to serve.
I love it. I got to tell you, John, military, police, author, and now politics. Where can people find you, learn more about you, and follow what you're doing?
Awesome. Yeah. I'd love people to kind of look into my background and things I've done. You can look at my political stuff at johnfab4congress.com. That's JOHNFABB, the number 4 Congress, or johnfabbricatore4congress.com. You can reach the website either way there. You can look at my book, De-Iced, on Amazon. It's on Amazon. You can download it to Kindle. I'm trying to get somebody to work on the audio version of it, because I've had hundreds of people reach out and go, "We listen to books in the car. We don't read them anymore." So looking at someone to do that for me. So those are just easy ways. I'm on X at John_Fab. You can follow me on X there. And, just reach out to me, ask me questions. You want to talk? I'm always that guy that's willing to answer some questions and talk to everybody.
And I can absolutely attest to that. I texted you. I think you answered me within 10 minutes. And now here we are. John, I can't thank you enough for spending time with us
Thank
today.
you, Betsy.
And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Are you passionate about supporting law enforcement? The National Police Association is on a mission to strengthen our communities, protect our families, and ensure justice prevails. But they need your help. Every dollar you donate makes a difference. It funds the legal defense of police officers and police agencies, supports advocacy for pro-law enforcement legislation, and funds community outreach programs and education. Imagine safer streets, stronger bonds between officers and neighborhoods, and a brighter future for all. Join us. Visit our website at nationalpolice.org to donate today.